Coming up on this edition of Reel to Reel.
I'm Steve Kiltonic. I'll have the story of forbidden art. An exhibit here at Elms College features art created by prisoners at the Auschwitz concentration camp.
One woman's story of outwitting the Nazis as she came to the aid of thousands in the Warsaw Ghetto. And Dan Dumas will take a look at what's happening in and around the Diocese of Springfield. These stories and more are just ahead on this edition of Reel to Reel.
Here is your Reel to Reel host, Sharon Roulier.
Hello and welcome to Reel as we come to you today from 16 Acres Garden Center in Springfield, where you can find a good dose of spring to get you in the mood for planting and gardening. And it's also Divine Mercy Weekend, a weekend traditionally marked to celebrate the prayer movement inspired by the visions of a simple Polish Catholic nun in the early 20th century. This movement has grown substantially over the last 80 years, thanks in large part to the devotions of St. John Paul II. Since he was a young boy, Karol Wojtyła, who would become Pope John Paul II, had a devotion to the movement dedicated to God's healing mercy. Last summer, videographer Bill Pekosha and I traveled to Poland in the footsteps of John Paul II. One of our stops took us to the Shrine of the Divine Mercy, located on the outskirts of Krakow. As a young man during World War II, Karol Wojtyła would stop here to pray on his way to or from work at the Solvay Quarry and Factory, the Sanctuary of Divine Mercy on the outskirts of Krakow. Later, as a bishop, he promoted the cause of Sister Faustina Kowalska, the Polish nun who lived in the convent here during the period between the two world wars. A simple, uneducated nun who urged everyone to recognize God's divine mercy, as demonstrated in his sending of his son to die for the sins of humanity. And finally, as Pope John Paul II, he beatified, then canonized Sister Faustina and formally designated the Sunday after Easter as Divine Mercy Sunday. Pilgrims traveling in the footsteps of St. John Paul II were able to visit this Catholic basilica dedicated to the Divine Mercy devotion. It's also the resting place of St. Faustina Kowalska, who was canonized on April 30th, 2000. Several side chapels in this large basilica allow smaller groups to celebrate Mass. And on this day, Father Gary Daly, chaplain to the group, offered his thoughts on St. Faustina to the pilgrims.
Jesus' message of divine mercy through St. Faustina tells us that no matter what our sin, no matter what our transgressions, no matter what our evil, as long as we seek His mercy is given to us. That is an amazing message of hope and love. And how privileged we are today to be able to stand here in this shrine of divine mercy, where it all began in the 1930s.
Sister Faustina lived a simple life as a nun in Poland, a member of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. At the convent next door to the shrine, a museum houses her bedroom, a desk where she would write her now famous diary, with a lamp and a copy of the manuscript. Her spiritual legacy to the Church is devotion to divine mercy, inspired by a vision she had in which Jesus himself asked that a painting be made of his image.
And what did Jesus want as his signature of that picture? He asked for 5 simple words that would affect humankind for the rest of our lives. Jesus, I trust in you. In Polish, Jezu ufam Tobie. 3 words in Polish. It would have been these words of divine mercy that John Paul, Karol Wojtyła, would have known as a little boy.
St. Faustina also wrote in her diary that Jesus said to her, Poland is dear to my heart in a very special way. If Poland is faithful and obedient to my will, I will raise it high in power and sanctity. It will project the spark that will light the world and prepare it for my second coming. This spark out of Poland was certainly Pope John Paul II himself.
Niech stąpi duch Twój i odnowi oblicze ziemi tej ziemi.
The new basilica was completed in 2002. It's a modern two-story ellipsoidal structure designed to resemble a boat with a 77-meter-high observation tower symbolizing the mast. Millions of pilgrims from around the world visit this site each year, which in 1985 Pope John Paul II called the capital of Divine Mercy devotion. Deacon Joseph Gard, a retired deacon from the Diocese of Springfield, said visiting the shrine was a moving experience for him.
Well, I heard that story about Divine Mercy back in the early 80s, and what Jesus said to St. Faustina, I want you to spread this message throughout the world. He first spoke to her, she was a little girl about 8 or 9 years old, couldn't even write. And he said to her, you're going to be my secretary. And she said, but I don't write well. And he said, I'll take care of that. That message is now spread all over the world from a nun that communicated with Jesus back in the 30s. And that was, I would say, the highlight of that pilgrimage was that Divine Mercy Shrine.
The last time John Paul II was here was on August 17, 2002, when he dedicated the completed basilica and formally entrusted the world to Divine Mercy, one of St. Faustina's deepest desires. Members of her order carry out the message of Divine Mercy throughout the world today, including several sisters in Dorchester in the Archdiocese of Boston.
It's not a new message, it's been revealed in Scripture, but the Lord wants to bring this message to the people of our times. And He chose St. Faustina, a very uneducated nun. She only had 3 winters of schooling to write the thick diary.
Sister Katerina says St. John Paul II was one of the great heralds of the message of Divine Mercy, a message that is still very much relevant today.
When we feel the whole world is collapsing on us, just all we need to do is turn on the TV, the news, headline news, and people are filled with fear. What's going on? What will be next? We can count on this source of faithfulness. We can count on our Lord.
And Divine Mercy is the focus of the official logo and prayer for World Youth Day, which is coming up in July of 2016 in Krakow. We have more information about World Youth Day on our website at iobserve.org. And still to come on Reel to Reel, Dan Dumas will take a look at what's happening in the Diocese of Springfield, and Forbidden Art, a moving exhibit of pieces done by Holocaust victims. These stories and more are still to come on this edition of Reel to Reel.
The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passion's brother Terrence Scanlon, your Chalice host, inviting you to take time out of your busy days and join us Sunday morning at 10. This week, we welcome Father Francis Riley, pastor of St. Mary Parish in Longmeadow, as our celebrant. The Chalice of Salvation, your spiritual connection, Sunday morning at 10, right here on 22 News.
I'm Dan Dumas with your Reel to Reel News Brief. A controversial proposed historic district, which has been the source of much emotional debate in Holyoke, finally came up for a vote this past week. Terry Hegarty was at City Council chambers for Tuesday's final debate and vote. He filed this report.
The Holyoke City Council, as part of their April 7th meeting in City Hall, voted down a proposal to create a Polish Heritage Historic District in the city. The proposal involved several properties in the Maple and Lyman Streets neighborhood, including the now closed Mater Della Rosa Church. Councilors rejected the plan by an 8-7 margin. The measure needed a 2/3 majority of the 15-member council in order to pass. One thing that proponents, opponents, and members of the city council agreed upon was that the effort to establish the district had been underway for a long time.
I think we're all kind of relieved. It's been so stressful and so disturbing all these years. This is over 4 years that we've been going through this.
Our Lady of the Cross Parish in Holyoke is a result of a 2011 merger between the former Mater Della Rosa Parish and Holy Cross Parish. The Diocese of Springfield, as well as Our Lady of the Cross Parish, had opposed the measure, mainly due to the additional financial burdens that would accompany a historic district designation. The diocese released a statement saying that Bishop Rosansky was pleased with the city council vote and that he recognizes that there remains much work to be done in healing the wounds caused by the sad but necessary pastoral planning process and closing of beloved churches. The Fairfield Avenue Local Historic District Commission formulated the plan.
I'm disappointed, of course. We knew it was going to be close. It seems the level of misunderstanding about historic districts is unbelievable. Some people just don't understand the value of a historic district.
The diocese has never stated that it has any intention of demolishing Mater Della Rosa Church, although they would like to find a suitable reuse for the building. However, the disposition of the church is still in the hands of the Vatican, which has said that the diocese cannot sell the church until an appeal is heard in Rome.
Meanwhile, the trial of Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev will enter the penalty phase on Monday, after he was found guilty Wednesday on all 30 counts. In advance of that finding, the Catholic bishops of Massachusetts, including Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky, came out on Monday with a statement reiterating the Church's opposition to the death penalty. In it, they write, "The Boston Marathon bombing trial is a painful reminder of the harm that impacts many people, even beyond those who are killed or maimed by violent criminal acts." They went on to say, "The defendant in this case has been neutralized and will never again have the ability to cause harm. Because of this, we, the Catholic bishops of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, believe that society can do better than the death penalty." While the death penalty is not allowed in Massachusetts state cases, this is a federal case, so it would be available. You can read the entire statement online at iobserve.org. Meanwhile, speaking out for life was the goal of 100 pro-life supporters on Good Friday morning. They were joined by Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky. Carolee McGrath reports.
Huddled under umbrellas on a gloomy Good Friday morning, the faithful came to pray.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
More than 100 people gathered to pray for life, the unborn, their parents, the sick, the dying and the elderly, and all who are vulnerable. The Pro-Life Commission of the Diocese of Springfield and Catholics for the Unborn organized what's known as the 300 Witness Vigil, which lasted from 10 a.m. till noon. Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky at first humbly stood in the back of the crowd as the group prayed the Stations of the Cross. But then Bishop Rosansky led those gathered in the Rosary.
Today we commemorate Good Friday, that is the death of the Lord Jesus, and we remember how many times Jesus dies, especially in the abortions that are committed here in our country, in the United States, and throughout the world. And to see so many people who come out on a rainy Good Friday morning to pray, especially for an end to abortion and to pray for all the victims of abortion, really gives us the true meaning of Good Friday, the Lord's death for us, and the hope that we find in His cross, that even beyond death and even beyond the sin of abortion, there is hope for new life and resurrection.
Catholics for the Unborn have been leading the Stations of the Cross at Planned Parenthood on Wasson Avenue in Springfield for many years. Last year, a local sidewalk counselor had the vision of making the vigil even bigger, and word spread to gather a larger pro-life witness. 2 police cruisers showed up but did not appear to address the crowd and did not disperse the crowd. Last summer, the United States Supreme Court unanimously struck down the buffer zone law, which kept such vigils back several feet away from the clinic's parking lot entrance. Now, as long as those gathered don't block the driveway, they're allowed to peacefully pray. More than half of the crowd was made up of teenagers. Isaac and Sarah Page drove down from Greenfield with their family. Is it important for the teens to be out here?
Yes, I think so, because there's so many young mothers who have to make this difficult choice, and some mothers, like their mothers, the teenagers, their mothers, they want them to do this, and I think that having teenagers out here to support them, I think it's a good thing that they know that they're not alone. And
you can easily just give that baby away to somebody else that can love that baby if you can't do it yourself. So it's just kind of like, it's not right.
Teens from St. Cecilia's youth group in Wilbraham also attended.
I mean, it's raining, so, but hey, it's a Good Friday thing we can do for, Christ's sacrifice.
I think it's very important to stand up for what you believe in, no matter how uncomfortable or comfortable you are. Especially today on Good Friday, Jesus died for all life, and he loves unconditionally, whether you're born or unborn, or whether you've lived 100 years or 100 seconds. And I think it's really important to stand up for all the lives that he died to save.
And those gathered hope that even more people will join them next year. Reporting for Reel to Reel, I'm Carolee McGrath.
And you can read more on these events, as well as stay informed on all the happenings here in the Diocese of Springfield and beyond at our news and information website, iobserve.org. There you'll find up-to-the-minute and accurate news in the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and beyond. That's our news and information website, iobserve.org. I'm Dan Dumas, and that's your Reel to Reel News Brief.
A little known but powerfully moving story about one woman's heroic efforts to save Jewish children during the Holocaust in Poland was celebrated last month at Elms College in Chicopee. The life and work of Irina Sendler, a Polish Catholic social worker who outsmarted the Nazis, saving 2,500 Jewish children from death in the Warsaw Ghetto, is the subject of a documentary and a long-running high school play. Irina Sendler was a seasoned social worker in Poland when World War II began. She organized, along with her co-workers, a group to get help to Jews inside the Warsaw Ghetto who were starving and were eventually deported to Nazi camps. Sendler made it her mission to try to rescue as many children as possible. She placed them with foster families or in convents or orphanages until the war was over, hoping they would be reunited with their biological families. The penalty for giving any kind of help to a Jewish person during the war was death. Mary Skinner is a California filmmaker who has brought Sendler's story to the screen, capturing an account of her life and works. Her film was screened at the Elms College.
And so she was taking a huge risk, as were all of the other women that she collaborated with. And at one point she was caught by the Gestapo and she was tortured, and eventually she was supposed to be executed. But her comrades in this underground organization bribed a German guard, and she was able to escape from the Gestapo prison in Warsaw.
Sendler spent the rest of the war underground under an assumed name, then returned to social work, eventually helping to reunite these children with their biological families. Together, the group saved some 2,500 Jewish children, protecting them throughout the war. This story went largely untold during the time of the Russian occupation of Poland following the war until the early 1990s, when communist rule was lifted. When the story began to circulate, Skinner says she had the chance to meet Sendler and convinced her to be the subject of her documentary. Skinner also told me of a fascinating connection that Sendler had with St. John Paul II through a holy card containing the image of the Divine Mercy that Sendler had carried with her for many years.
One day she had had a particularly brutal session with the Gestapo, and she was thrown back into her cell to sleep on this straw mattress, and she felt this holy card under the mattress.
A sign from her co-workers in the underground that help was on the way. Sendler carried this holy card with her for many years, until the day that Pope John Paul II visited Warsaw. She waited in a long line to meet the pontiff, giving him the holy card as a gift. Years later, when she was very well known for her acts of courage, John Paul II wrote Sendler a letter.
And in the letter, he enclosed another copy of that holy card. So there was a very special relationship between them in a strange way. And she had that letter framed on her wall, and it sat next to a mosaic that had been given to her by the chief rabbi of Israel. And she used to say, I have a letter from the Pope and a letter from the chief rabbi on my wall side by side. That's how we do things in my room.
Irena Sendler's story is an inspiration to many, including today's social workers, says Elms College professor of social work, Scott Hartblay.
That story, I think, needs to be kept being told and told, well, not only for her as a righteous person, as a hero, I see that, but also for what we all could do, if we were in situations like that.
For the past 4 years, the Elms Department of Social Work has presented the Irena Sendler Award to a senior social work student who demonstrates courage and creativity during his or her college career. And because the Elms felt so connected to Sendler's story, they also hosted a production of Life in a Jar, the Irena Sendler Project. This traveling play has been produced by students from a small town in Kansas since 1999.
Your children, they need to be taken out of here. They could die in the ghetto, or worse, be taken to a death camp.
The play was written by 3 students of history teacher Norm Kennard. They have performed it for audiences all over North America and even in Poland. This was their first trip to Western Massachusetts. Kennard says the play resonates with everyone.
A USA Today reporter at the beginning of this project said that he loved the story because it was a story about Protestant kids from rural Kansas who discover a Polish Catholic woman who saved Jewish children. And we always like that line because it is a story for all people.
We should mention that this year marks the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and this week will also mark Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, on April 15th and 16th. In conjunction, Elms College is featuring the New England premiere of the exhibit titled Forbidden Art, a photography exhibit of rare pieces done by Holocaust prisoners. Steve Kiltonick tells us more.
Auschwitz was a notorious network of German Nazi concentration and extermination camps built and operated by the Third Reich in Poland during World War II. Polish political prisoners arrived in 1940. Extermination of prisoners first took place in September 1941. At least 1.1 million prisoners died at Auschwitz, which became a major site of the Nazis' final solution to the Jewish question. Tens of thousands of people of diverse nationalities also died in the gas chambers or of starvation, forced labor, diseases, and medical experiments. The camp was liberated by the Soviets on January 27, 1945. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the liberation. Since March, an exhibit called Forbidden Art has been on display at the Alumni Library at the Elms College. It features 20 high-quality photographs of extremely rare pieces of art created by prisoners at Auschwitz. This is the New England premiere of the exhibit, which was made possible by the Elms College Social Work Department and the Jewish Federation of Western Massachusetts. Other supporters include the Kosciuszko Foundation's New England chapter and the Polish Center of Discovery and Learning. The various pieces of art feature scenes documenting daily life in the camps, portraits of prisoners, and depictions of idealized life outside the camp. The collection offers a window into the hidden world of the inmates and reveals how they escaped the horrors of their imprisonment. Maureen Holland is the director of the college's social work program.
Part of the social work training that we give to our students is rooted in human oppression, which is one of the courses that we teach here at the college. So we try to help students understand the historic context, particularly focusing around the Holocaust.
Holland said the artwork comes from 2 sources.
There were people who had very few resources in the camps, but were able to pull out maybe a candy wrapper or a little piece of paper. They could find a pencil somewhere, and from the darkest, deepest, most horrible conditions, there's the desire to create, to communicate, and to share art. But they did it at tremendous personal cost. Some of the other pieces were under slightly different conditions where the artists actually worked. They worked in offices. They were already accomplished artists.
This portrait is by Marian Ruzamski. He died of starvation but was able to pass his drawings to a fellow inmate before embarking on his death march. This wooden sculpture by female prisoner is called the Sorrowful Christ. Any wood could be used as raw material to sculpt, like this small sarcophagus on which is carved the birth dates of the deceased, an attempt by the artist to maintain the dignity of death. This bracelet depicts scenes from the Lodz ghetto. The artist probably died in the gas chamber after passing it on hidden in a mess kit. This watercolor was part of a gift album from the men in one camp to the women in another. It's filled with personal greetings and shows that despite the evil around them, the prisoners did not stop noticing each other's human needs. Some artists, like Stanislaw Tralka, maintained a sense of humor when he drew this caricature of Nazi SS men. He died of typhus in 1942. Another unknown author created a fairy book tale for his children about the adventures of a black chicken. The drawing behind me was taken from a sketchbook found on the grounds of Auschwitz in 1947. The artist is known simply by the initials MM. It's probably one of the more valued in the collection because it actually shows mass extermination of the Jews at Auschwitz.
These are not retrospective paintings or sculpture of what people in the camps did 70 years ago. These are our primary documents and demonstrate not only the artistic talents of the inmates, but the resilience. By creating artwork, which is something of beauty, something of great grandeur of the human spirit, we are saying we will not give in. We will not be downtrodden. We will always have hope.
Carolyn Topor is the president of the New England chapter of the Kosciuszko Foundation.
It truly amazed me that these people had that courage and the fortitude to show their dignity and show that even in the face of death, they were going to survive in some way. Maybe not physically, but psychologically while they were going through all these terrible tragedies.
All the original 2,000 art objects in the collection are permanently housed at the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum in Poland. For Real to Real, I'm Steve Kiltonick.
And due to popular demand, the exhibit has been extended through April 30th at the Elms. For more information, you can find a link on our website at iobserve.org. And coming up this Wednesday, Bishop Mitchell Rosansky will host a talk at the college on interfaith and ecumenical relations. The invited guest will be Father John Crossan, Executive Director of the Secretariat for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Our own Bishop Rosansky chairs that effort and works closely with Father Crossan. The talk is at 7 p.m. at the Elms Chapel. We've posted more information at iobserve.org, our news and information website, where you can stay up to date on all of the happenings in the church. That's iobserve.org. And for this week, that's Real to Real. Thanks so much to the folks here at 16 Acres Garden Center for hosting our visit today. Doesn't it just make you want to get out and do some digging in the dirt? I'll be right back here next week at this same time for another edition of Real to Real, your window on the world around you. Have a great week.
Real to Real is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.